have found the Genesis frequency. This is Dr. Stephen J. Kazmina welcoming you in to another episode of a show that focuses on your whole life prosperity and success. Whole life prosperity and success by cooperating with the universal laws that are available to each and every one of us. This is Quantum Leap Goal Achievement, radical personal transformation, whole life prosperity and success. Now, stay tuned for another exciting episode that'll move the needle in your life from where you are now to where you want to be. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it may be, wherever you are in the world when you hit that play button. So glad you did. You found another episode of the Genesis Frequency Podcast with me, Dr. Cause and Effect, Dr. Stephen J. Kazmina, coming at you with an episode and multiple episodes, and episode after episode after episode that focuses on all the different ways, the certain ways, the proven ways that we can improve ourselves, our lives, our businesses. And, I can't emphasize enough. That's why I say it each and every week. This is for individuals, those of you working on you. This is for small business owners and entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. This is for companies, corporations, organizations, ministries, those looking to have an influence and an impact on corporate culture, on corporate company attitude, energy, feeling, beliefs, all of that. And to further that, for individuals, small businesses, and companies that want a solution to the plethora of problems that come up with human beings being human and navigating this life experience. So I help you to look at things like performance, productivity, priority management, profitability, communications, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And so today, what I want to take a dive into, and if you want to talk to me about any of that, reach out, successappointment.com, get you on my calendar, or Stephen with a PH, Stephen at successocean.com is the email to reach right to me directly. No virtual assistant monitoring that. It goes right to me. So it's that time of year where we look to spring cleaning, right? Spring cleaning's been around a long time. And I want to talk about spring cleaning in consciousness, spring cleaning upstairs. Zig Ziglar used to say, a checkup from the neck up. But this goes beyond that deeper, because we want to go deep into our subconscious mind as well, as much as we possibly can. Because when we know that we're going to do some deep cleaning, when we know that we're going to do some tidying up of the garden, when we're out there pulling weeds and planting flowers, to use that as a little bit of a comparison here. We know that some of those weeds, boy, I love it when they're easy. They come right out. They got a root that doesn't go down very deep. And other ones, we're just pulling on them. We got one hand, we got the tool, and now it's down in there deep. And then we put one hand around it, and it's still not coming out. Then we grab another hand and pull, and sometimes, we just got the top of it. Then we dig a little more dirt out, and then we're wrapping another hand, then another hand. Before you know it, we got a big hole, and we're getting out the axe, and we're chopping it out, but we still didn't get the entire root out, right? So let's talk about pulling weeds and planting flowers as we talk about this spring cleaning. And I've talked about this another way, and that's whenever you've heard me mention, and I have many, 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 many times mentioned paradigms. Paradigms being a multitude of habits that have almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior. Paradigms are programming, are programs. Paradigms are our habits, and sometimes those are grouped together, and they control every aspect of our behavior. And when we really want to change, when we're really on this positive path for goal achievement, for living the big dream, for instigating a change in corporate culture, for growing our small business and in a way that people feel a real energy, an energy of positivity, an energy of life, an energy of zeal and enthusiasm when they walk in your place of business or call your place of business, or you as an individual waking up every morning on fire, ready to pursue what is yours to pursue that day. We want to we want to become aware, first of all, that we're governed by these habits. And when it comes to cleaning house and pulling weeds and planting flowers, we got to dig down and we got to get them all out, right? Because they're in control. And that's why when I talk to a lot of people, I discover very quickly that their story is about getting so far, in pursuit of their dreams or in their company growth or in their corporation working on the corporate goals. They get so far, and then there's some kind of stopper in there. Sometimes they can't put their finger on it, sometimes they can, and they go back. Sometimes they don't even notice it, that they're drifting backward, they're backsliding all the way to where they were when they started the whole initiative. Yeah, we're gonna change this year. We're gonna change the culture. We're gonna change our corporate goals. We're gonna grow. We're gonna make an impact. We're gonna have an influence out there. And the zeal is there, right? The excitement's there. Maybe everybody buys into it. You bought into it, and then you're 6 months in, and you look around. It's like, wow, I didn't intend to be where I am right now. When I had all that zeal and excitement, I didn't see this happening. I didn't see that coming. And it's one thing after another. And what happens is the paradigm, the programming, the habitual behavior takes over because those roots run so deep. So that's why when we're working on this garden, we want to pull all the weeds out, right? But often, especially if we got a garden that's grown over, we can't pull them out all at once. Now we have some of those. Remember earlier on, I said some of those weeds we pull, it's great. They have barely have a root. We toss them out, and we're so happy we're not there struggling and fighting and engaging in battle with those roots that seem like they go to the other side of the earth. But that's how it is in consciousness. We got some things maybe we just picked up, maybe they're a few years old, but we noticed that I got into this bad habit of, let's just use some. I got in this bad habit of scrolling and getting distracted by something on my smartphone, and so we can nip that in the bud. Those are those weeds with shallow roots. We're aware of it. We know we have to change because it's non-productive activity, and we have to move it aside. So we're aware of it. It's on the surface, no deep, deep roots. So we replace it, right? We're pulling the weed, and in the place of the weed, we're planting a flower. We're planting something we want to blossom into a good habit, into a good, consistent behavior. And and we label it that by looking at this new thing we're moving in. Is it supportive of what I want to achieve? Is this flower that I'm putting in its place going to be effective and efficient with either keeping me on track, moving me closer to the dream, moving me closer to the goal? So maybe those times that you spend with the scrolling in our example here, you set it aside, you shut it off, you put it down, you put it in the other room, and you dedicate that time to planning, to doing some of that micro goal setting, right? We take our big dream, outrageous goal, the impossible dream and we break things down into chunks. So instead of spending that time scrolling in our example, you spend time doing some micro planning. Okay, what I'm going to do this week. Okay, I want to accomplish this by the end of the week. It'll get me a lot closer. It'll chunk out a big part of that goal that has to be done for me to get there. So so whatever it may be, you have to identify these for yourself. The hard part is identifying those weeds and the roots that are in your garden. Because sometimes maybe you did some gardening and you did pull off the top, but you didn't get all the root. You don't see it. However, it's in control, meaning it's down there, it's growing, it's being nourished and nurtured one way or another by that soil, right? And so it is in consciousness. That's why these habits take over. They die hard because they're below the surface, but they're part of our programming. And they come from so many different places. Some of this stuff we're just born with. It's in our genes, in the genetics, and we come into this world with it. Other stuff we're bombarded from the day we're born and we grow up with it. And that's why we speak the native language we speak. And we get into these habits. We start doing things in an inefficient way, in an ineffective way, and it just becomes part of the way that we behave and go about life and living. So we really need to identify this. And while we want to tend to the whole garden, and here we're talking about the garden of consciousness, those nasty habits or those non-productive activities and behaviors, we usually can only address one or two of them at a time. So don't be discouraged by that. Just spend some time looking at your day. How do we do this? Well, we go through our day and we make notes of productive activity that we participated in and non-productive activity. And I suggest you do this throughout your day. You can break apart your day. Maybe after the first couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, you push back, take a look. Okay, what did I do in these last 2 or 3 hours that were productive? Was my activity for these first 3 hours of my day, was it productive activity? And identify it. And be honest with yourself. No, I answered my phone, and when I went to put it down, I saw I had a message. I checked the message. When I shut off the message, I started scrolling. I started looking at this. I went away to another website because I checked the email too, and there was this ad for something that really, yeah. And and then you look at that, and wow, a half hour was gone by the time I got back on track. So you have to be honest with yourself. Productive activity and non-productive activity. Just list all your activity. But you have to do this. If you wait till like the end of the week, Friday, you're not going to remember everything you did Monday. Maybe you will, but keep a good log in it. And that's why I use a paper success system, a paper planner. The online calendars are great. I use them too to keep my schedule organized, but I also have a paper planner, a success system, a personalized success system, a goal tracking system, a goal planning system, GPS. Go figure, right? It keeps me on track. It helps me navigate all the things that come up in my life. I suggest you get one of those too, but I keep it right at my side so I can track what I'm doing in the morning, those chunks of time. What am I doing for the first 2, 3 hours? What am I doing the next 2 or 3 hours? Maybe depending on your environment, maybe you just do it at noon, but don't wait till the end of the week to try to identify all your non-productive activity and all your productive activity. Have a good, honest look at least daily. What was productive? What was non-productive? And when you look at that non-productive activity at the end of the day and you're honest with yourself, you're saying, yeah, I didn't realize I spent, because give everything a time. I didn't realize I spent so much time doing that. Because you look at your day and maybe you got an 8, 9, 10 hour day and you look, wow, that added up. Those times that I went over there just scrolling or web surfing or chatting on the phone with a friend or something like that, that added up to 3 hours of my day. Now I want to remain in integrity. And And I'm not in integrity because I just wasted 3 hours of time or 2 hours, whatever you identify. And there might just be maybe you don't do any of those things. Maybe it's not scrolling or web surfing, but maybe it's just busy work. You look busy, but you really weren't accomplishing anything. It wasn't really productive time, wasn't really productive activity. So you got to pull that out. You got to pull that weed out, right? And you got to put something else in its place. That's where the success system, the planner, really comes in because you want to schedule your time, your blocks of time. Okay, I'm going to get this all done in this block of time. And you notice, yeah, I can do more, I can accomplish more. I can chunk out more of that goal that I'm working to achieve by eliminating this non-productive activity and putting something in its place. And so we can go through every area of our life and do this. And that's the whole point of this. Not just to look at your workday. What are you holding in consciousness? What are those weights? What are those habits of thought? You hear me say in almost every episode, we think 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and almost all those thoughts are the same thoughts we were thinking yesterday. And so many of those thoughts are based in worry, in doubt, in fear, in lack, in limitation, looking to the past, right? We look to the past, and often that leads to depression. Or we're looking to the future with worry and doubt and fear, and that can lead to an anxiety. Either way, if we're not fully present in the moment, both sides, both ways, looking forward, looking backward can lead to dis-ease. Something can show up physically. So we want to examine all this when we're looking at our garden. We want to examine what weeds need to be tended to, what needs need to be pulled so that we move about life and living in a more efficient way, right? Not dependent on the internal program that's been guiding us up to where we are at this point in our life. So what are those things in consciousness? What are those habits spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically that we have gotten into? And let's honestly take a look at all these. Let's take a look at, do I spend a lot of time being angry? Do I spend a lot of time in lack, in limitation? Do I spend a lot of time being in this place of unforgiveness? What do I have to work at? Do I spend a lot of time judging others, being in this on this seat of judgment? Do I spend a lot of time just being sad, maybe feeling sorry for myself? Do I spend a lot of time just fear for one thing or another? What am I spending my thought energy on? What is taking up my bandwidth? That's a good way to look at it because we want to make some adjustments. We want to do this spring cleaning. We want to pull these weeds out. We want to put something else in its place. So when we notice things like doubt and fear or maybe confusion or too much stress in our lives or too much worry in our life or maybe we've let too much pessimism move in or maybe we're just distracted, maybe we procrastinate, whatever it is. So now you want to flip to the polar opposite of whatever you have identified and build some affirmations around that. So this is how this is how we do that spring cleaning and tending to our garden. We've identified the weed, right? That's our habitual thought, our habitual words, our habitual actions and activity. We've identified what they are and we've labeled them productive or non-productive. Time wasters, not contributing to the big dream goal. So now we want to flip to the polar opposite and we want to build an affirmation of the positive state that we would rather experience, that contributes to productive activity, to productive thought, to productive words, to productive actions that are supportive of what we want to achieve in our lives, personally, professionally, and within our organization. Pulling weeds, planting flowers, affirming the good, and build those out. Build those out in the present tense. Make a list of them as you identify some of these weeds, some of these uh, program errors, really programming errors, habits that you have fallen into, habits of thought, word, and action. I got to stop that. So you build out the affirmation. You just don't keep kicking yourself in the tail and saying, you got to stop that. Well, you kind of brush it away, but you build something out positive that excites you that you can latch into. I'm so happy and grateful now that I am productive, making a productive use of my time, and then get specific with it and build out that affirmative statement. Write it down over and over and over and over and over again. Say it, state it out loud over and over and over again, not just once. Don't write it down once, but speak it hundreds of times. What we're doing is like in the previous episodes, we're conditioning and forming new patterns, new programming. So when we tend to drift to that old habit, what do? What happens? Well, rising to the forefront of consciousness is what the good that we've been affirming, as if to remind us, nah, nah, you've pulled that weed. All right. That weed's in the trash bag. You don't need to carry it around with you. Here's the affirmative statement that you designed to replace that. Yep, yep, I'm going there. And you start affirming again anytime you notice yourself drifting. So, it takes a little bit of awareness, to be awake and aware of your thoughts and your words. But this comes from having identified it. Most people don't take the time to do that. They're unconscious competence. They're moving about life and living in their day, just relying on this programming. Just it's second nature. And this is the way I do it. Boom, 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 and they just go about. But then they get to the end of a period of time, maybe the end of the year, maybe next spring. Yeah, I really didn't grow any new flowers. I really didn't get any closer to my dream. Talk to people all the time about it. They want the change, but they don't want to take the next step because programming tells them stay in that comfort zone. So I'm looking up and noticing that we went over again today. There's really important stuff to talk about doing this spring cleaning, doing this mental consciousness clearing so that we move into a more productive, more efficient, more effective way to influence the outcome of our days, to walk in integrity with what we want to achieve and how we're going about doing it. So this is all part of a certain way. We'll continue with this next episode, next show. For now, that's going to do it. You have been listening to the Genesis Frequency Podcast with me, Dr. Cause and Effect, Dr. Stephen J. Kosmina, and I wish for you an infinitely spectacular day.